if you are starting a business in which you don't know how to do the work in the business, I don't know how you're doing that. and I like I know that there are some people out there who do it. Right? I'm not saying that it's impossible, because anytime you do that, somebody will prove you wrong. Go do it. Cool. Right. I'm just saying, personally, I've never met a successful entrepreneur who started the business, who only worked on the business without ever working in the business. And by doing so, never knowing how to do the parts of the business that are most critical as an actual service. If we're talking about a service business, right?
It just frustrates me because as soon as somebody says, I want to work on my business, and then they start focusing on how they can do that immediately without even making the first 10K a month, then I already know they're destined to fail because they're not willing to put in the work of, working 16 hours a day.
Just when people come in and say, look, I'm not afraid to do the work. And what they actually mean by that, and what's implied, is I'm not afraid to do work as long as I like doing the work and it's within my realm of comfort. But they're actually afraid of doing the dirty work, which is the important work. And that's problematic. Arguably, the most important parts of the business are not sexy. And that's what you have to be okay with doing. You said you wanted to start a lawn care company. Do you want to mow the lawns yourself?
No.
No.
But I do. So here, actually, I don't forever, because eventually I want to just manage and run the business and even turn it over and just be, a majority shareholder of it, and then turn it over to another CEO. There's a long play here. I'm not going to get into exactly why I want to do this, but it's a multifaceted reason instead of just starting a lawn care business. But I know where you're taking this. So,
you want me to say it? Or you want to say
yeah,
it?
go ahead.
Well, you have the people, of course, who say, I don't want to get stuck working in my business. I want to always be working on my business. And there's truth to that. I'm not saying that's not true, but I do have beef with people who don't realize that early on you're doing both, and that is unavoidable. There is no way around that. And in fact, if you are starting a business in which you don't know how to do the work in the business, I don't know how you're doing that. I know that there are some people out there who do it. Right? I'm not saying that it's impossible, because anytime you do that, somebody will prove you wrong. Go do it. Cool. Right. I'm just saying, personally, I've never met a successful entrepreneur who started the business, who only worked on the business without ever working in the business. And by doing so, never knowing how to do the parts of the business that are most critical as an actual service. If we're talking about a service business, right?
Sorry, I thought you had more.
Nah, that was it.
Yeah, I my biggest gripe with that is that I see this a lot in the agency space, where all of these, I think, younger, like kind of almost like self-help agency gurus are just like, you need to like hire your VA or hire your media buyer or hire, your what do they call them? The high ticket closers or the closers or whatever. And that way you can work on the business while they all work in your business. Well, first of all, you're contracting all your work out. So nobody's actually working in your business. You're paying people to outsource labor, which isn't in your business. And second, there's no real way to work on your business unless you do the legwork in your business first and then get out of there. And I just hate that there's this negative stigma with, working in the business and being an owner operator. Like, the best businesses that started from nothing and grew to something huge was exactly that. Like, I hate to like bring like the superlatives in, but like Jeff Bezos with Amazon, like there's pictures of him working in his, I don't know if it's a garage or like a back room or something like that.
Yeah, we've seen the pics, right? Where
Yeah,
he's got
on
his
his
office and
on his computer, and just a bunch of books, and just like, like he's selling, man. Like, every business started like Steve Jobs was in his garage or something like that. Always owner operator, and then eventually you go and get out of it. And it just frustrates me because as soon as somebody says, I want to work on my business, and then they start focusing on how they can do that immediately without even making the first 10K a month, then I already know they're destined to fail because they're not willing to put in the work of, working 16 hours a day for
Mhm.
a month or a month. That's laughable for 5 years.
Oh, just when people come in and say, "Look, I'm not afraid to do the work." And what they actually mean by that and what's implied is, I'm not afraid to do work as long as I like doing the work and it's within my realm of comfort. But they're actually afraid of doing the dirty work, which is the important work. And that's problematic because a lot of arguably the most important parts of the business are not sexy, right? Um, and that's what you have to be okay with doing. I told you, data studio. And I was straight up honest, and I'd tell you sometimes, like, hey, I'm avoiding this because I really don't want to do this. This is not a good time. I'm unhappy as I do this, but I still did it and I had to do it. Somebody's got to do it. It's important. And that's how it goes sometimes. You just say, yeah, the only person who can really do this is me. Um, so put your head down and get it done, even if it's not exciting and fun. And yeah, that is unavoidable, I think.
I feel like the biggest there's like it's almost like a bell curve of people who engage with this. There's like the people who are just starting their agency from nothing, and they're just like they keep hearing all like the Grant Cardone and Gary Vee crap, where they're like, oh, I got to work on my business. I got to work on my business instead of in it. And then you have the people who are at the top who are like, no, like, you gotta put in the work. You got to do all this. And there are people on the other side who are like, have like investment businesses who are like received a bunch of seed money from investors. And they're just like, all I'm going to do is work on the business. And they never actually worked in the business. And then ultimately they end up failing.
Yeah, not to make this an offshoot, but I talk about this quite a bit with people, mostly in person, because it's not one of those things that goes well when you discuss online. But uh, people just assume with what we do that we have a lot more in common with a lot of different people in business than we actually do based on the structure of things. Because I tell people all the time, like, look, we're bootstrapped, we're small. That automatically takes us out of VC world, external investor world, um, cash infused business world. Like, it's instead of a startup, it is just small business that is bootstrapped. And that is completely different from, we have a board and we meet once a month and we have to handle board politics and everybody has fancy titles that are 3 letters. And, you know, that's different. That's very different. And it's like you said, I think how do you tell people where they stand, or that the advice that they're listening to isn't applicable yet to them because they're either not yet in that position or maybe they'll never get into that position? How do you say, at this point in time, this is what you should be listening to, and that these other things that people are saying, it's not that they're wrong, it's just that you're not ready for that, or you already went past that. You don't need to listen to it anymore because you figured it out. That sort of thing. I think um, statistically, I think most people don't need to hear get out of your business so you can work on it. I think most people need to hear the opposite. And then the people who do get to a point who actually need to be told, hey, you're trapped in your business and you need to start working on it. Those people, that's not the majority, statistically speaking. Now, maybe that's better advice in general to give to them because they've already proven that they can build a business that is at least enough to employ themselves, and that's an accomplishment, right? That's already hard, but if those people prove that they can do that, then maybe the people who are talking about this work on your business instead of in it are saying, look, I'm not talking to the entrepreneurs, I'm not talking to the wannabes, the people who haven't done it yet. I'm talking to the people who are already there, who have already said, I've hit that 10K, whatever it is. If we're talking about agencies, that's a good spot for it to be. 10K a month MR GP, monthly recurring gross profit. And then you say, okay, yeah, I'm in a bind. I got to figure out how to now start that transition of getting out from in the business and start working on it. But you're going to be doing both while you do that.
I also had kind of something to say to that 10K for our agencies. Like at 10K, once you hit 10K a month in MRGP, that's when I think that's kind of like around when you start recognizing, hey, I need to take steps to eventually get out of my business. And that's not the point where you jump, because we've been at that baseline for what, 2 years now, and we're still in the business. But the difference is the work that can be offloaded at that 10K mark is what we call like the monkey work. Like it's very kind of tedious, monotonous work that can just be kind of pushed off to someone you hire, whether it's one or two people internally, and then you start dealing with like more custom requests and more, and not necessarily custom, but more. You start being able to take on clients with bigger budgets and trying to figure out how to grow that, but also not just do the R&D, but also do the execution on that research and development. So like a good example is, hey, we have processed out basically our entire onboarding process, except now that we've integrated Looker Studio.
Yeah, we just broke it.
Instead of Raven, yeah, the entire onboarding process is broken now. So while it's broken, now Cody and I are like, okay, so we're going to switch from building websites on development sites where we have to update our host file to access. Now we want to do it on subdomains so we can do live edits and not just send screenshots over to clients. Because if we do it now, we can now update the entire onboarding process from start to finish. But the whole subdomain thing, like switching to subdomains instead of dev sites, that is something that we've got to come back into the business, and we have to start working on that with the minions. And then we have to this whole Looker Studio thing that Cody was talking about. Yeah, it's still technically working on the business because we're advancing our reporting software, but at the same time, it's working in the business still. And you can't. We wouldn't be able to do that if we were still doing some of that monkey work at the 10K mark. Now, when I think you should start actually worrying about literally getting out of your business and just doing sales and just promotion, I mean, you're probably not hitting that until almost $1 million a year. And
yeah, it's comical when people come in and they're like, I've got a team of 3 and I'm out of the business. I'm like, what? You got 3 people, they're doing everything? Like what? and you think you're good with 3 people. You have a secure, stable business. You can just check out. That to me is precarious, my friend. And that is the word that I use, is precarious, because I say it to you all the time. I'm like, I look at, various, it's not that our financials themselves are ever precarious. It's that when you're forced to analyze risk and say, based on what we are hoping to accomplish with our current state of financials and taking into account, how small we are, I think being small is precarious no matter what, right? You are at risk because when you're small, any minor change makes a big difference. If you have, 3 employees, like we were saying, so when people think that they're solid and you lose one, there you go. You just toppled.
You don't even have a hierarchy at 3 employees. Right. There's the 3 and then there's you. That's not a hierarchy. That's a family. Family.
Family.
What happens when the agency gets thrown a curveball? And this is something that someone who has equity or skin in the game has to handle. That's you. And obviously, at some point, you can argue that that's still working on the business, but it happens more and more once you start to actually grow past that 10K mark. Because we've said it before, 0 to 10K is easy, and it sounds hard when you're not at 10K, when you're at 1K, but once you hit that 10K mark and you're constant there, you're like, wow, that was easy. And what Cody says all the time is what's hard is 10 to 100K. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer in the people who say 10 to 100K is hard. There are people above them that say 100K to $1 million is hard. And then it just keeps going on. And so one of our listeners of our podcast, Brian, he reached out to us and recommended another podcast that he was listening to that made him think of ours. And it was the My First Million podcast. They had episode 488 or something like that. They had Andrew Wilkinson on, who I think he was the writer of The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Wait, that was Mark Manson.
Mark Manson. They had Mark Manson on.
Oh, they did?
Oh, that was a different episode. That was an episode after. Yeah, they had Mark Manson on afterwards. But then right before that, they had Andrew Wilkinson on, who does a bunch of other businesses and he has an agency. But he was talking about the profit first system, and it reminded Brian of us because we talk about it a lot. And what was funny is in this podcast, like these guys are like ultra wealthy comparatively to us. Like they've got, publicly traded companies that trading almost $1 billion. And when they say things like, they haven't, not that they've said this, but like when they say things like you had to get out of the business and work on the business, like they're talking about CEOs who are like doing 5-10 million. And when they say small companies, they're talking about companies that are doing like 10 million in revenue. Like that's a small company to them. So like to us, like if we're doing over 500,000, like we're nothing. We're like a drop in the bucket. So when we say like, at that million point is when you get out of, working in the business and you start working on the business, there's probably people like Andrew Wilkinson and like those guys on the My First Million podcast who are like, dude, million's way too small. Like you're still going to be in there in the weeds.
Yeah, that's a different world I have not much interest in, if I'm being honest. This keeps coming up, I think, more in life because we get older and then we meet more people and stuff. And I tell people, I say my way of saying is I don't want that big of a life. I don't. I want to be a hobbit. I want to stay in the Shire. I like my relatively simple life with because it's all comparative and it's all respective to the scale that you're comparing to. And yeah, that's bigger. But I did want to say that regardless of size, getting to this point of transferring knowledge and information takes time. And by time, I don't mean like a month. I mean years, realistically years. And you can accelerate that as much and as hard as you want to work without going crazy, and as much as you're able to focus at your computer. But do that while trying to balance your health to some extent, because I've done both, right? I've done the 16 hours at a computer every day, and had health problems as a consequence, and accepted where you say, okay, I'm just going to temporarily neglect my health. I'm going to put this on the side, put it on the back burner for a while, and then I'll come back to it. And that's okay. That's one way you can do it. Or you can just take the L for a little bit and say, look, I'm just going to do it slower, right? I don't need to do it this fast. But no matter what, it takes time, and there's time to document and be able to transfer the knowledge just in that simple way. But then there's also transferring of knowledge in a teaching way, because building up good people takes time. And I'm saying building up because if you're starting out and you're starting out with your money, which you don't have, then you have no choice but to build up people. And it's really unfortunate when you've met lots of very cool and talented and smart people in your life, and they say, Cody, give me a job. And you say, I can't afford you. If you want to make peanuts, sure, comparative to, where you're at professionally now at this point, then yeah, by all means come over. But realistically, you just say, look, we can't. We are in the position and business of having to build people and make people professionals and into their careers, not poach them yet. And that's a later level and a later thing. But at the beginning, it's you have to build people and you have to build them up. That takes time. And I have a big belief and philosophy with that. And it's that the reason you document the work is to transfer knowledge and get the work done as quickly as possible. After that, you take the time to nurture and teach them based on things that they want to know, the things that they didn't understand about the processes that they were doing. And you dedicate that time to building them up, because when they do the work, they don't have to understand the work. You can document things so that people do them without ever knowing what they're doing. And then you can come in afterwards and say, here's what happened. Here's what you did. Here's how it worked. And What questions do you have so I can help you better understand this? But doing both of those at the same time uh, is a major time sink, a major time suck. And it's going to take you 4 times as long as just documenting it. Get the work done. And then, and because you're also going to have different levels of employees or different ones with different levels of interest where they're going to say, I'm just going to Google this, right? After hours. That was me. I just, when, I would do something and then 7 to 11, like I said, I went home and I Googled it because I didn't know what was going on and I just wanted to know it better. But most people aren't going to do that. Most are going to want to be taught on their time, understandably. But yeah, sometimes you will get those rock stars.
I'm a big Googler. Last night was it last night? Yeah, last night I was looking up 2 things. I was like, one, do noise canceling earbuds actually protect your hearing? Because what they do you know how they work?
No, this is it's not quite Vol for me. Vol, like we talked about. I'm like, I know peripherally about this. The Vol was just completely new information, but
Okay, so
hit me with it.
noise canceling headphones, the way they work is when they emit an opposite frequency that blocks out the incoming frequency. So I was like, well, I could see a world where they don't work. In fact, they make it worse, because it's just frequencies being blasted in different directions. But then I can also see a world where like, yeah, it does help. And so I looked it up and it was, yeah, they actually do reduce frequencies incoming into your eardrums by like 20 to 30 decibels. But still not enough for like your safety stuff. So I was just curious because I'm mowing the lawn and I was like, what if I just got noise canceling headphones? The other thing was, I was like,
Wait, so are you mowing the lawn with ear protection? Do you have the?
No, I have an electric mower, so it's already pretty quiet.
Oh, okay.
But I had another question too, like what are holdings companies used for? I feel like every big company has one, and I'm like, why? What are the benefits?
What are you
this?
holding?
Yeah. I felt stupid, and I was like, I feel like I'm in business and I should know what this is. And like I generally do. Like generally, they're like parent companies that own the subsidiary companies. But like, why? Like, what are all the benefits? And so then I went down that rabbit hole. And
well, enlighten us. You can't just say that.
No, because that all sounds stupid. Because I feel like I don't know all the answers. Okay, here's what I know. What I know is that you typically have a holdings company that is the parent of multiple companies, and then the biggest benefit is like the holding company can transfer assets and capital to other companies without, it's basically a tax loophole kind of, but there's like tax benefits to consolidating all of the taxes into that one holdings company and then dispersing it from there. So like if we had multiple Evergrow properties, the tax from one Evergrow property, like the profit, the holdings company would be like the share, like the owner of that company, that subsidiary, and then it would go up to that, and then from there the profits get distributed. So
makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's other benefits too, but I just very vaguely went into it. So that was an offshoot. There's something you said a while ago about health that I wanted to touch on, where it's like you can like sacrifice your health or like go slower. And I think most successful people, like uber successful, this isn't like advice, but I think the most successful people usually take the L and have their health take a back seat. Because you always look at people like Zuckerberg or Bezos, who were like when the company was expanding like rapidly, they just like fat, gross, and old. And like Zuckerberg is not old; he's like 36, 37. Like he's pretty young. And but then like you look at him now, and like Bezos, I don't know how good he looks with his shirt off, but I know Zuckerberg's got like a 6-pack. Like Zuckerberg is rocking that MMA body, and Elon Musk. Like I think he's always going to be large and in charge. But but like they get to that super successful point where like they're finally like mostly out of the business, and if anything they're just in like litigation and board meetings, and then they're like, okay, so now I'm gonna start like working out a lot. Like Alex Becker from Hi-Res, I follow him on Facebook now, and he like 2 hours a day he practices jujitsu, and I think like that's not just his workout routine, he also does workout. I'm like, dude, this dude has so much time to hit the gym, because I bet he's hardly in the business right now. So I kind of like, that's like the path that I want to take too, and just like grow uber fast, and then like, yeah, I worry about my health later. But like, I want to look good in my 30s too. Like, I don't want to wait till I get to 40 or 50 and just have like the, the saggy old man abs.
Well, I think everybody will get a reality check too, because if you get to 40 and you've neglected your health entirely without any sort of major health event, I think you're pretty lucky. I think, I mean, maybe you're not. What people self perceive as neglecting is a variable, right? Because some people, there's a difference between I'm not working out and then I'm not cooking and eating Twinkies every day. Right? Like that's a very different level of neglect, and one's going to have much bigger, a much larger impact on your life. And I think if you're doing the Twinkie thing, you're going to be faced with confronting your health sooner than later, by force, not by choice.
When do you like to work out during the day? What's the most optimal time where you're like, I want to work out at this point?
Now,
Yeah.
like right now, because so I'm back in classes again. The only time that I get any sort of exercise in is at the end of the night.
No,
If
that's when you have to. When would you like to? In the perfect world, when
oh,
would you like to?
it's written off, dude. I mean, that's
You're
no,
like,
I
I
mean,
don't.
and
No,
maybe this
never.
is important too for people to understand. You get to do anything, not everything. So I have a very short list of things that within my 24 hours I allow myself to do. And when I'm back in classes, exercise is at the very bottom. So I am taking that out consciously and understanding that there are things that I want more than to be super fit and exercise. And I can do minor things
I
like
don't.
now,
I don't
such as
think.
wait till the end of the day, and if I have time, go for a walk. But other than that, no,
Look,
it's just not
you're
on
not
the
answering
list.
my question. Pretend you have nothing on your plate. You're
Well, it's
scotch
different.
free. You're scotch free all
Mm-hmm.
day. At what time of the day do you go work out?
Would I want to? Uh, I don't know. It doesn't mean much for me. I guess probably later. Why?
Like at
You
night?
have a specific time for you. Like you're like, this is what I like.
Yeah,
Just
right
say it
now.
right now.
Yeah, it's noon right now. Noon is my ideal time to work out because I worked out this morning. The reason why I hate it is because I hate getting out of bed and I'm not energized. And I feel like if we had a supplement sponsor, this would be the perfect time to plug them. But we
Who
don't.
is it? Hey, hello, Fresh. You know what's
No.
great?
What
Actually,
here's what I don't
that.
like even like the pre-workout stuff. Like I don't like working out after taking that because if it's a running day, for instance, I'm running and my legs are just itchy because like that pre-workout is coursing through my veins like venom, and like it's just like so itchy on my legs. So I don't like taking pre-workout. I'm also not awake. I don't have the energy that I have. But then right about noon, right now, I feel like I can go like move a car and like so I want to go work out, but I'm like I already did. I don't want to waste more time. So yeah, noon for me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Option.
hard. I get into I just accept. Like in my brain, I think, okay, new stage of life. I'm just putting a dark line between previous things that I was doing and what I'm able to do now, and then I can't. It's even hard for me to imagine otherwise, which is it's dumb, I know, but people will ask me questions, yeah, like that, and say, okay, if you could. I'm like, well, I can't. Like, I know, but I'm just if you could. I'm like, I know, but I
Play along.
like you're the worst kind of person. I'm like, I know, it's pretty
I have
terrible.
another hypothetical for you.
Okay,
But it's back on the topic of
I'll
the
do my best.
podcast. Okay. Is there a point in which you would ever start a VC funded company? Not necessarily
Mm,
VC. We could do an angel investor too. So for the listener who's not familiar with those two, the difference of VC is usually an actual company that invests in small businesses, whereas like an angel investor would be like your dad's rich friend.
So would I start a business with somebody else's money?
Yes.
No.
In not even like any like perfect scenario.
No,
You
I
can't
really
imagine
don't. I
anything.
don't get along well with others. It's already a miracle that we get along enough to do
What if it was
this,
my money?
right? Well, we're partners, right? That doesn't count, right? Because you're going to be involved then too, and I think that's a partnership. But if you're just saying, "Hey, somebody else is going to give you money to start the business," uh, no, nah,
Hmm.
no thanks. I don't. Yeah, that's the big life. That's the complexities that I just don't want to deal with. And I know I'm limiting myself in some ways by doing that, but I'm also okay with it. I think you gotta know yourself well enough to know that the environment that you work best in, know because there are people who are the inverse, right? Where they say, look, if I have all that pressure of doing it myself with starting from zero and no funds, that I'm just not gonna do it. Right. I need at least the quick dopamine fix of having the cash infused so I can hit the ground running.
Well, there's a reason why most like startups, not startups, but most people who start from the ground up, like without any funding and just do everything bootstrap. There's a reason why they only do that one time successfully, and
Mhm.
then after that, they start investing in other businesses and they start becoming like that the actual investor
Well, you're not going
because
to live long enough. That's the truth, right? I mean, I believe it. I think if you go from zero to one with a service business, and then you see that money as the opportunity to now take things to the next level, why would you do that again? It's not a good time. Not in the early stages. Like we're having fun now. There was a time when it wasn't that. It was still fun. It was less fun. But
I
I don't
think
want to go back to the ramen noodles by obligation or by force. I like ramen noodles by choice. That's a
yeah,
fun
but
thing.
you live in a different like personally, you live in a different mindset because like when I choose to start my lawn care business, it's like, yeah, I'm doing it from the ground up with no initial investment except $1,000 is all I'm going in with. What I don't have to come home and eat ramen noodles because I have a nice healthy paycheck coming from Evergrow.
Mhm.
And but what does what does get me off is starting over and just being a very crusty bootstrap blue collar company. And sometimes I feel like sometimes in my life I'm like, man, like when I was like starting fresh in like Kansas City and living in an apartment alone with my dog and like, just like learning things and like, you know, building my decor and just like my living room and all this stuff, like that was fun. And in its own way, right? Like I much prefer my life right now, remodeling my house with Lauren and doing all this and growing exponentially. But like the early stages where every step was like super tiny to me now, but it was big to me then, those are fun. It's like playing Skyrim. Like you can play for so long and then basically like, one shot everybody and, have millions and millions of gold. But then you always find yourself starting the game over because it's just fun to start from nothing and build something up again. And that's kind of how I'm seeing this. But then at the same time, having the safety net of coming home and being like, well, I'm not broke. Like, I'm just having fun on the side.
Yeah, I see the advantages to that. I think that there's having a broke mentality in the best of ways. And I don't mean broke mentality in the bad ways. I mean having the urgency and never forgetting what that was like is a good thing. And
Mhm.
that's what keeps you driven. I think there's also ways to artificially create that. Uh,
Like starting
even
over on
once you start.
Skyrim.
Well, I mean, whatever you have to do, right? Something that worked for me earlier on was just you have your bank account that's visible, and then you have savings. People do this with their retirement all the time. They don't know what's in their retirement, right? They're like, I have
Yeah.
one, but I don't see that as money as I can touch, so it's not actually money. It's not visible. It's not real. So you can just do that with your savings or something like that too. Make it so that it's not visible. It's not something that you find or believe is accessible, and then you stay hungry.
Do you know what I do with so I've started saving again. which is, I feel like, a shock for some people thinking that I don't save. I have had nothing in my savings. I started saving again because I suck at it. And not saving money, and not I don't suck at not spending money. I suck at putting money away and allocating it towards like actual savings. And so what I've started doing is every dollar that I spend that's not essential, so like, not rent or not like utilities or whatever, this includes gas. So like every dollar that I spend that's not essential, I match it and I put that in savings. So whatever comes into my personal revenue account, into my bank account, I immediately look at that after I subtract all my expenses and just say, I only have half of this available because the other half is going into savings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically, I could just do that right away and then just spend everything down to zero. But then the act of having to actually transfer the same amount of money over to savings after I spend something makes me want to buy less things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is it's one of those things where it's like watching a movie where you're like, this is interesting and I can't relate or self-insert at all because this isn't how I think or
because you just
wired.
put 80% of your stuff into savings anyways.
Yeah,
you're just like, please.
I've just never, well, I remember being in college. There was a we had 3 guest professors that were, I don't know how they were doing it. They were like applying for the job. So we had to, or we didn't have to, we received guest lectures from them. And there was one guy who said, and I remember nothing else from any of his talk or what he taught us, but I just remember him saying, yeah, but you grow into money, right? And I said, no, you don't. Most people do, yes, but you don't have to do that. It's not something that just happens to you. It's something that you let happen to you.
What was he trying to say? Like, as you get older, you get more money?
He was saying that as your salary or your income increases, you just take your lifestyle to equate it and equivalent it to whatever income that you're earning. Lifestyle inflation, right?
Yeah.
Whereas mine's pretty fixed. I'm already living the life that I want for the most part. And then the bigger things, just they have to be secure and stabilized. So for example, the eventual goal of living in Japan and having a business in Japan as well, having worked there, I have to get to a point where I can stabilize the income for that in a baseline way. And some people just want more. I'm not asking for a lot with that. I just want to be in Japan. I don't need a big house here. Don't need a big house there. But yeah, I think a lot of people just, well, either they do. He's not wrong. That was I should admit, he's not wrong because most people do that. Most people just take whatever raise they get and they adjust their lifestyle to now accommodate the income that they're receiving. But there are also some people just enjoy spending money, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what money is for, right? I go too far in the opposite direction, but there are the people in the opposite end who don't like spending money. It's not a fun thing. It actually makes me very anxious, and it's not a good time.
I don't like spending money. I just like having things and doing things. and spending money is an unfortunate consequence of that.
Consequence.
We should end the podcast before I say something I regret.
That was on my notes. Look, you're going to be working in your business for a while before you get the opportunity to work on it. Opportunity isn't even the word. Before you should. And I think if you go too early, you're going to find yourself right back inside of it again too. So it's not bad to grow slow. Take your time, get your processes worked out, find good people, take the time to train them, build them up as people. And then, eventually you will get to the point where you will be on your business, and then you can do jiu-jitsu for 2 hours a day. Until then, put your head down.
Yes, prepare to work. So, all right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening to this episode. We'll see you next time.
See ya.